Remember, there's only room for one sovereign at a time, not two. So you can't be the same as the sovereign if you're the Prince of Wales or the heir.
King Charles III signed something at midnight, and no one outside those walls knew what chaos it could bring. He made 17-year-old James, Earl of Wessex, a prince.
Because they're probably all watching this, so it's not true really, but it's quite fun watching people's reactions.
Using a rule so rarely used that it's only happened twice in the last 100 years. With no cameras or witnesses, it makes you wonder what's really going on behind the palace doors.
The solutions are out there. There is real solutions to these problems.
What exactly is Charles trying to do? And how will this change the future of the monarchy itself? Join us as we unveil King Charles's recent decisions and what they mean for the throne. What Charles did at midnight. When the court circular quietly listed a new entry, hardly anyone stopped to notice. It said that James Alexander Philip Theo Mountbatten-Windsor, better known as the Earl of Wessex, would now be called His Royal Highness Prince James of Wessex. It sounded like a small formality, just another royal update. But to those who pay attention to the monarchy, it meant something far bigger. The change came through something called letters patent, a centuries-old power that lets the monarch make legal decisions with just a signature and a seal. No parliament, no public debate, just royal authority. It's one of those ancient tools that somehow still exists in modern Britain, and King Charles decided to use it. The whole system of royal titles goes back to 1917. King George V set the rules then, deciding who could be called prince or princess. Only the monarch's children, the monarch's male line grandchildren, and the eldest living son of the Prince of Wales were included. It was a move to cut away old German ties during the First World War. Technically, that meant James was a prince from birth in 2007. But his parents, Prince Edward and Sophie, chose not to use that title. When James was born at Frimley Park Hospital, his parents wanted their kids to have something close to a normal life. They decided that both James and his sister Louise would grow up without the His or Her Royal Highness style. They became Viscount Severn and Lady Louise Windsor instead. Sophie once said she and Edward wanted their children to learn the value of work and independence instead of living off inherited privilege. For a while, that seemed to go as planned. James went to regular schools, St. Mary's, and later Radley College. He liked sailing, joined environmental programs, and hung out with friends who mostly saw him as a normal teenager with an unusual family. Things stayed quiet until 2021, when Prince Philip passed away. That brought titles back into the conversation. 2 years later, Edward became the Duke of Edinburgh, and James took on the courtesy title of Earl of Wessex. Then came this year's surprise. Before James even turned 18, the king made his move. There was no grand event or press statement, just that quiet note in the court circular. Later reports said the decision came straight from Charles, after private talks with Princess Anne and Prince Edward. The reason given was the needs of service, which, in palace language, usually means the royal family is stretched thin. And that's really what this is about. The monarchy is running low on working royals. The older ones are slowing down, and the younger generation isn't quite ready or willing to fill the gaps. With Harry and Meghan out, and Prince Andrew sidelined, the number of active royals has fallen sharply. Princess Anne and Sophie have done their best to keep things running, but they can't handle everything forever. So when you look at Charles's move, it feels less like a family gesture and more like a strategy. He needed someone young, steady, and loyal enough to help carry the institution forward. James fits that perfectly. By using an old royal power, the king quietly brought his nephew into the fold. No fanfare, no debate, just a small note that carries a lot of weight. It's a quiet move, but one meant to keep the monarchy alive a little longer. Still, that quiet signing in the middle of the night leaves one uneasy question hanging. What did Princess Anne really say about it when she thought no one was watching? The sisters' brutal truth. At the Royal Windsor Horse Show in May 2025, Princess Anne spoke with a bluntness that most of us rarely hear. She wasn't trying to make a public statement, but a few people later passed her words along to trusted reporters. What she said didn't feel like a celebration. It sounded more like damage control. Anne, who's seen more of the royal grind than anyone alive, talked about James's new title less like a ceremony and more like a lifeline. She apparently told friends that the monarchy only survives if it remains useful, if it can still perform the work the country expects of it. Making James a prince, she said, wasn't about glamour, prestige, or public admiration. It was about ensuring the institution actually functions. She laid out the evidence plainly. The past few years had been a strain unlike any before. She herself had faced a serious health scare in 2024, forcing others to shoulder duties she normally carried. Sophie had been stretched thin, managing double workloads while keeping the family visible and engaged. Edward, she noted, was constantly juggling responsibilities, his energy stretched to the limit. Charles, she added, showed signs of fatigue that could no longer be ignored, a king weighed down not just by age, but by ongoing health issues. William, she observed, looked drained, carrying the pressure of preparing for his reign while trying to protect Catherine, who was still recovering from her own challenges. The conclusion, she told them, was stark and unvarnished. The royal machine cannot keep running at this pace without new hands. Someone young, capable, and loyal needed to step into the roles being vacated by the older generation. In her view, James was that person. If he didn't take up the mantle, the system itself risked faltering, leaving gaps no one else could fill and exposing the monarchy to a collapse in effectiveness. Few understand that, like Anne. She's spent her life doing the work no one notices. Decades of visits, openings, ceremonies, tours, sometimes over 400 engagements in a single year. She's held the structure together quietly, and that gives her the right to speak truths others avoid. There aren't enough working royals left to cover the ground they once did. Her own life shapes how she sees this. She didn't take royal titles for Peter and Zara, believing they should carve their own path. But she also knows her line doesn't feed the royal workforce. That leaves the next generation, and James sits in the open seat. In her eyes, he's been quietly prepped all along. His schooling kept him grounded. Volunteer work gave him purpose, and the family's low profile protected him from the stumbles that catch other young royals. To Anne, he's the perfect slate, ready to become the steady, uncomplaining royal the institution needs. Her thinking follows an old-fashioned sense of duty. Titles aren't about privilege, she believes. They're about showing up and doing the work. She often says real service isn't about being seen. It's about being there. James becoming a prince is, in her view, an assignment. The glamour? That's for everyone else. Her logic might feel cold, but it's consistent. In her eyes, the monarchy isn't a place for personal happiness. It's a machine of roles and obligations that must keep moving, no matter who fills them. Behind James's new title, she may have let slip the quiet truth. He isn't being honored, he's being drafted. Anne's focus on the institution misses something important. Were Prince Edward's own words about raising James hint at a style that feels less like just keeping him safe, and more like there's a careful plan behind it? Prince Edward's confession. Prince Edward often talks warmly about raising James. In interviews with Vanity Fair and Hello, he paints a picture of a boy who's free to follow his own path while also embracing service. On the surface, it sounds fair, even modern. But people close to the family hint there's more to it. James's freedom, they say, has always had limits, quietly set to steer him toward duty. Edward likes to say James shares his quiet sense of responsibility. Those who've worked at the palace, though, suggest it wasn't something he just picked up naturally. It was taught. Edward and Sophie, from all accounts, shaped James's life to discourage showiness or ambition. Every choice, every routine, seemed aimed at molding him into a steady, dependable royal, not one to grab headlines. Even school choices carried meaning. James went to St. Mary's School, Ascot, and then Radley College. Good schools, respected ones, but not Eton, where most senior royals end up. Edward framed it as giving James a normal childhood, but insiders saw it differently. Eton teaches leadership, Radley teaches service. That subtle difference mattered. Edward wanted James to be comfortable following, supporting, cooperating, not leading or commanding. The same pattern shows up in his charity work. Beach cleanups, environmental programs, and youth projects look like regular volunteering. But those who know say Sophie carefully guided it. She picked safe, well-managed programs tied to her patronages, so James could learn public service under supervision. What looked like a teenager trying to help was, in reality, a first lesson in being a working royal. Edward often talks about James's path like it mirrors his own, saying his boy is being set up to support William the way he once supported Prince Philip. But really, it's not the same at all. Edward had a shot to step outside royal life, to see what the world was like, to make mistakes and learn before coming back. James doesn't get that. Right from the beginning, his parents put him on this clear route toward royal duty, shaping everything around him to make sure he was ready. He hasn't had space to chase other interests, try different careers, or even live a life a bit removed from expectation. Schooling, volunteer work, and daily routines, all of it has been arranged to teach loyalty, responsibility, and readiness for a role that was decided long before he could even weigh in. From day one, James has been molded to fit a plan, with almost no room to make his own mistakes or find his own way. Soon, James will take over the Duke of Edinburgh's award. On the surface, it seems like continuity, a symbolic passing of the torch, but it carries weight. Once he's the face of it, walking away wouldn't be an option. It gives him purpose, sure, but also a tether to a role he didn't pick. Sophie's influence is everywhere. With a background in public relations, she knows image and messaging inside out. Her idea of teaching work isn't about freedom or independence. It's about accepting duty. James has been trained to serve quietly, to carry on the family line without complaint. He's ready for service, no doubt, but maybe not by choice. Edward's way of raising James clearly worked. He's a prince ready to step in and serve. But the question no one seems to be asking is this: who really gains from James being made a prince? And what exactly is he being shaped to do? The William and Catherine endgame. Behind the palace's neat announcements, the story of James's new role is far messier. Publicly, Buckingham Palace frames his elevation as a way to lighten the load for William and Catherine, helping them handle the growing demands of royal life. But people close to William say he isn't completely comfortable with it. He's allegedly told aides that asking his cousin to step into the same pressure cooker that swallowed his mother and drove his brother away feels wrong, like pushing someone else into a storm. He knows too well. William knows what it's like inside that meat grinder, as he's reportedly called it. He saw Diana unravel under constant scrutiny. He's watched Harry clash with the system that shaped them both, handing James the same weight to ease the strain on himself and Catherine reportedly makes him uneasy. Still, the monarchy needs bodies to function, and James has been picked as the one who can't refuse. On paper, it's tidy. James will cover roughly 50 to 100 events a year, representing the crown in places that matter but aren't glamorous. Factory openings, charity dinners, and tours in Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. He'll do the routine work that keeps the monarchy visible without wearing down William and Catherine. But even small duties carry quiet risks. When people are frustrated by politics or money troubles, it's often the royal face in their town that absorbs the blame. James could end up as that face. Catherine's illness last year exposed just how vulnerable the palace can be. While the public gave her sympathy, planners saw a warning. Goodwill alone can't keep the system running. The next time a crisis hits, scandal, health, or backlash, someone has to take it on. That someone is James. If it breaks him, the monarchy survives. He's not the heir, he's the shield. Even the roles he's expected to take show the plan. When he joins Catherine's Hold Still project or shadows William at environmental events, he's there to learn, yes, but also to protect. Any criticism falls on him, keeping William and Catherine out of the line of fire. The system stays insulated. James loses privacy. He'll manage a nearly constant schedule, a life of appearances with little space for himself. Friends from university will start careers, relationships, and live freely, while he remains tied to duty. He won't inherit power or fame, just responsibility. William reportedly fears history repeating itself, another young man being molded for endurance, not happiness. In the end, James's new title might not be a reward at all. It could be the crown's quietest way of surviving, swapping a teenager's choices for the institution's future. William and Catherine needing help is just one side of the story. Public opinion isn't guaranteed to follow along, and you have to wonder, could this move actually backfire on Charles? Why this decision could detonate in Charles's face? Recent research from the National Center for Social Research paints a worrying picture for the monarchy. Fewer people than ever think the royal family is essential to national life, and support among anyone under 55 has taken a sharp dive. Surveys from Republic suggest that less than half of that age group even want the monarchy to continue at all. What really keeps palace advisors up at night, though, is how much resistance there is to paying for more royals. Even those who still support the institution bristle at the idea of funding extra family members who don't seem to contribute much. And that's where James's new title comes in, at probably the worst possible time. Officials frame it as necessary support for William and Catherine, but it comes with a serious price tag. Security alone could hit £500,000 a year, and then there's aides' salaries, travel, and upgraded housing. At a time when the NHS is stretched thin, bills are soaring, and families struggle just to keep warm, spending millions on a teenager looks, well, pretty tone-deaf. Younger Britons are especially critical. Polls from Ipsos and YouGov show most Gen Z and millennial voters think inherited privilege is wrong. Positions, they say, should be earned. James, to them, is the poster child for everything wrong with monarchy today. Wealth and influence handed down for nothing. Online, people reacted with sarcasm, asking who he even is and why taxpayers should foot the bill. On TikTok, he quickly became a running joke, the latest Prince of Britain apparently made in the 21st century. The palace tried to control the reaction by quietly slipping the news into the court circular. That didn't help. When something's hidden, people assume there's a reason, and the guesses are rarely flattering. Groups like Republic have already seized on James's appointment as proof that the monarchy can't reform itself. Graham Smith, their leader, told reporters that it shows how outdated the system has become, with teenagers getting status and money simply for being born into the right family. Meanwhile, other European monarchies are moving the opposite way. Sweden, Denmark, and the Netherlands have all cut the number of publicly funded royals, a change voters liked. Charles, by contrast, seems to be expanding the roster. The timing couldn't be worse. Britain is facing its toughest economic period in decades. Strikes, high energy bills, record food bank use, and public tolerance for privilege are at a low point. Against that backdrop, a young prince with expensive security and staff is bound to trigger anger. History shows how this plays out. Russia and France didn't fall because people suddenly opposed monarchy in theory. They fell because rulers looked out of touch and self-indulgent in hard times. James could easily become the face of that resentment. William and Catherine have goodwill and public sympathy. James has none. He's unknown, young, and now carries a title that invites scrutiny. Every mistake, rumor, or hint of arrogance will be blown up. The palace can't say he earned this. His only qualification is his bloodline. And that's exactly what modern Britain struggles to accept. The hope is that he proves himself, wins people over, and justifies the decision. But it's a gamble. If he stumbles, the fallout could hurt the monarchy more than any protest ever could. Charles isn't just betting on James. He's betting on whether Britain even wants a monarchy anymore. And looking at what other royal families in Europe learned the hard way, the warning signs from history are pretty impossible to ignore. Strategy or fate? The British monarchy has always been a delicate balance of tradition and transformation, a centuries-old institution that must look timeless while still finding ways to survive in a modern world. Today, that balancing act feels more fragile than ever. Questions are swirling. Is the change unfolding inside the palace the result of a carefully crafted strategy, or is it simply history forcing its hand upon a weary crown? Every shift in the monarchy seems quiet, almost invisible at first glance. Yet when examined closely, they carry meaning. Prince William's influence can already be seen in subtle moves, none more striking than his quiet effort to bring Sophie's children, Lady Louise Windsor and James, Earl of Wessex, closer to the center of royal life. In an era where the monarchy faces the reality of a slimmed-down model, William appears to be preparing for a future where fewer royals perform official duties, but the crown remains just as visible, just as powerful in public imagination. For King Charles, these changes may feel both inevitable and urgent. Now 76 and facing the frailties of illness, his reign already seems narrowed. Once a long-awaited future, his time on the throne is proving to be less expansive than he might have hoped. He wears the crown, but the pressure of mortality shadows every step. Beside him, Queen Camilla works to secure her place in history. For years she has been a controversial figure, tied forever to the memory of Diana, the people's princess. Now as queen consort, she leans heavily on carefully staged appearances, designed to project relevance and stability. Yet beneath the polished smile lies a deeper battle, the struggle not to be overshadowed or forgotten in the grand narrative of the monarchy. Meanwhile, Princess Anne, ever dutiful, remains a pillar of strength. Stoic and steady, she has long been considered the monarchy's hardest worker. She represents an older style of royalty, reserved, relentless, and uncomplaining. But Anne is only one person, and even her shoulders cannot carry the weight of the crown forever. Against this backdrop stands William, the heir. Calm, deliberate, and strategic, he seems less a passive prince waiting for destiny, and more a leader already shaping the monarchy's path. He watches, plans, and quietly guides. His vision is not one of expansion, but of streamlining, making the monarchy lighter, leaner, yet sharper in its influence. Each step he takes appears to prepare for a reign not yet his, but one he seems to be rehearsing for daily. The question that lingers is whether these shifts are deliberate choices or the unavoidable results of external forces. Is William quietly orchestrating the monarchy's next chapter, or is he merely reacting to tides beyond his control? Public skepticism, relentless media attention, and the enduring shadow of his mother, Princess Diana. The monarchy does not exist in isolation. It lives and dies in the court of public opinion. Britain today is not the Britain of Elizabeth II's youth. It is more diverse, more questioning, less deferential. Younger generations weigh royal privilege against economic struggles and wonder if a monarchy is still necessary. William knows this. His actions reflect a man not only preparing to rule, but to defend the very survival of the crown. And yet, as with all things royal, the full truth remains elusive. What unfolds in the spotlight may be theater, deliberate gestures crafted for cameras and headlines. What unfolds behind the palace walls may be the real story, hidden from view. Strategy and survival intertwine in ways outsiders can only guess. The monarchy, after all, has always thrived on mystery. It shows just enough to keep the public enthralled while guarding its most vital secrets. Today, with Charles facing illness, Camilla fighting for relevance, Anne holding steady, and William already shaping the institution's tomorrow, the Windsors find themselves at a turning point. The stage is set for a future that feels both uncertain and inevitable. Whether guided by careful planning or driven by forces too vast to resist, the monarchy is moving toward William's era. The question is not if, but how and whether. When the crown finally rests on his head, the institution he inherits will still command the loyalty of a changing nation. In the end, the truth, like so much in royal life, remains half-hidden. What is visible may be performance. What remains concealed may be the heart of the story. And it is in that space between spectacle and secrecy that the monarchy continues to survive. What are the likely implications of this and similar moves on the future of monarchy? Is the monarchy ready for the groundbreaking changes that are yet to come? Let's delve into the details of how the crown is being reshaped. Can a teenage prince save a dying institution? James's spot in the royal family makes the monarchy's struggles impossible to ignore. He's meant to stand for the future. But the fact that he matters so much shows just how fragile the whole system has become. If he succeeds, if he does what's expected, he keeps alive something many see as out of step with today's world. If he falters or decides he doesn't want this life, he could reveal just how outdated it all really is. The pressure on him is enormous. He has to be visible enough to justify his place, but never outshine William and Catherine. He has to work hard yet not seem ambitious. He has to connect with young people who question inherited privilege, while quietly accepting that much of his life will never be his own. History offers little comfort. Princess Margaret spent a lifetime frustrated by her secondary status. Prince Andrew ended in scandal, and Prince Harry walked away entirely. Those who made it work, like Princess Anne or Prince Edward, did so only after years of testing other paths, realizing this life was the one they couldn't avoid. James doesn't get that choice. His path is set before he even reaches adulthood. He hasn't lived independently, hasn't tested himself outside the palace walls. The hope is that his upbringing will keep him loyal, but even the most disciplined mind can crack when the real world presses in. Social media adds another layer. Every move he makes will be captured, dissected, and criticized by millions who treat the monarchy like a show rather than a tradition. He'll be compared to influencers who seem free, while he must always perform. Too open, too private, too expressive, too dull. He can't ever get it quite right. Then there's the money. Every expense, from clothes to travel, will be scrutinized by people struggling just to pay their bills. University might be his first real taste of normal life. He'll sit next to students building careers and making mistakes, while his role has already been mapped out since birth. That imbalance can feel hollow. What is he for, really, beyond duty? His cousins have defined paths, but his own is murky, more shaped by expectation than choice. The real danger is becoming a symbol of endurance, a young man performing a role he never asked for. If he stays content, it proves the monarchy still shapes obedience. If he rebels, it shows its cracks. Either way, The institution relies on him. The question is whether he'll follow the script or someday decide it was never his to play. So what happens when James, just a teenager, starts to see that the crown on his head feels more like chains? And can one really expect British taxpayers to keep footing the bill for this royal experiment once they see how much it actually costs to prop up a monarchy that the rest of Europe has already figured out doesn't run like this? Let us know what you think. Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.